Hi there. We are here today to talk about strategy, one of the most important but overcomplicated concepts in business today. Why do I say overcomplicated? Well, a lot of us really overcomplicate the process. I see this happen in a couple different ways. One is a team or a company may have this idea that in order to set an effective strategy, they need every shred of data that is possibly available in the company. They need Excel spreadsheets and big, long, 50-slide PowerPoints from every department head. They need to really dig in and look backwards to what has happened. That is not an effective way to set strategy. If you get the right people in the room, they're going to know, in essence, where the business is at without having to review a shred of data. There may be some big, key data points that we want to look at, but that real deep dive that takes a week just to go through, that's not necessary for strategy and leaves people exhausted and without an actual plan to move forward. So that's one way that we overcomplicate it. The second way that we see is folks confuse strategy with a vision, and they get, because of that, too big, too grandiose. You've heard of companies perhaps that want to have a 100-year strategy, and you hear of some where that works. That's amazing. I'd really like to meet their founders that are probably from a different era. But at this day and age, the market is shifting so quickly, with technology and AI being what they are, with working conditions being how they are. We are moving so fast. When people try to set a strategy that is too big, too grandiose, too much like a vision, they start to get bogged down and don't know what to actually do with it. So strategy does not require really, detailed data work, nor does it really benefit from that type of big vision. What strategy really is what do we need to focus on? What do we need to do right in order to accomplish our best outcome, in order essentially to win? So with that in mind, strategy just being the what of our business, our department, our team, whatever level you're working at, strategy is what do we need to focus on? Once we figure out what we need to focus on, we can start to get into how, but first we need that what, and that is strategy. So we're going to talk today about what it takes to set and then execute a really effective strategy. Whenever I think about this topic, I think about a client of ours here at Werq, a beloved, cherished client that's doing great. And they came to us having spent 7 years going through different processes, different consultants, different types of folks, trying to figure out how to get a strategy that really worked for their business. They'd never been able to do it, but once they applied these 5 tips that we're about to share with you, they've knocked it out of the park and haven't really looked back ever since. So what are those tips? Number 1, to set an effective strategy, you need clarity on the goal. What is it that this strategy is aiming to accomplish? If I am the coach of a football team, my goal is to win championships, right? It's very clear. In a business or on a team, what is the goal? If we're going to build out this whole strategy to achieve something, what are we trying to achieve? This could be, oftentimes it ends up being tied to revenue or EBITDA or maybe expansion of some sort, geographic or head count. So the goal could be we're going to hit 100 million in revenue, or we're going to go international or something. But what is it that we're trying to accomplish? Number 1, you have to spell that out really clearly. Number 2, once you've got that goal, what is the timeline that we're playing with? What is the appropriate timeline, I should say, for us to really think in? Again, some companies will really want to think in 10-year timelines or 5-year timelines. When it comes to vision and thinking about where do we want to go long term, beautiful. Think decades, that's fine. When it comes to strategy, which is what are we actually focusing on and doing in order to achieve the outcomes we want, 10 years, I'm telling you, is way too long. We don't know what it looks like 5 years from now. In some businesses, we don't know what it looks like 5 months from now. So setting the appropriate timeline is probably shorter than you think. The most effective timelines that we see are typically 1 year. If you really push me, we can do 3, but 1 year. Sometimes it's 1 quarter, or 6 months. If you're in a startup environment or a very rapidly changing environment, it may be even shorter. But set your goal and then identify the appropriate timeline for that strategy to take place. Thing number 3, once you've got the goal, you need to have the right number of key priorities. What do I mean by this? Key priorities are those key drivers that we are choosing to focus on that we believe are going to most significantly impact our ability to achieve that goal. We have sort of a running joke here at Werq that if you have 27 key priorities, you actually have 0. A lot of our clients come to us and they've got so many different initiatives and priorities, things going on, and they're so excited about them, and we're excited too. But if you have 27 of them, it's being a little facetious, even if you have 17 or 10, oftentimes that's just too many for you, for your team, for the people responsible to picking them up. It's just too many to actually focus on. So you have to get yourself down. You have to have key priorities that are truly, what are the things that if we focus on, they're going to have the biggest impact. They're going to be the most significant value to achieving the outcome that we want. We recommend 3, just 3. I know that's stressful, just 3. Sometimes we can go as high as 5. And oftentimes those key priorities, they may have multiple initiatives that are driving up, maybe hiring is a key priority. Well, gosh, there's a lot of things that we might do to support hiring, but we know we're rallying around this need to hire, okay? Any more than 5 and you start getting dilution and you start not really focusing on what is the most important, not the most urgent, but the most important. Tip number 4 to develop an effective strategy is we have to engage the right people. Strategy is by nature a top-down process. It really is the responsibility of the leaders at the top to identify what is it that we're shooting for, what do we need to focus on to make that happen. However, without the input and buy-in and engagement of the folks that are usually 1 or 2 or 17 levels sort of down in the organization, it becomes really hard to take those priorities and actually lift them up off the ground. So to give you an example, the client that I'm referencing in my mind here, they did sort of the textbook, what we typically recommend. They had their senior partners meet for a few days to identify big picture strategy, the goal, the key initiatives that we're going to drive it. They then brought in the next level, the VPs, the senior directors, that sort of thing, the folks who are more active on the ground in the business. They shared with them what they had developed and why, made sure they had the right buy-in, and then worked collaboratively with that larger group to figure out how they were actually going to implement. If we don't have the feedback from those folks that are operationally responsible, if we don't have their buy-in, their feedback, their ideas, and ultimately their commitment, then those things that we identify as being very important are not likely to actually get done. So you need to involve the right people at the right cadence to actually pick it up. And point number 5, this is arguably the most important point, and this should apply to any strategy session you do, but also literally any meeting that you have that has any action associated with it. Strategy without accountability is dead. When we do strategy work, it drives us insane. People will do these like amazing strategy retreats and they're gone for a week or a day or whatever it may be. Maybe it's a session, maybe it's an offsite, whatever. And the team gets together and they talk about where they're going to go and how they're going to get there, and everyone's excited and it just feels so hopeful, right? And then we get back to the office Monday and the inbox is full and the phone is ringing and it's business as usual, and all those amazing dreams that we dreamt up together, they don't go anywhere. And we sort of take our head up out of the sand 6 months or a year later and we go, oh, that strategy we developed, gosh, that would have been cool if we'd done that, right? Drives me crazy. And the big thing that's missing, the reason that happens, is we leave strategy sessions or strategy conversations without clarity on accountability. Every strategy session must include who is going to do what, when, in order to make it happen. That's the most basic. Who is going to do what by when in order to make it happen. Along with that, there's lots of questions that we should be asking ourselves to make sure the strategy actually gets off the ground. We should be asking ourselves, what are the resources required and where are they going to come from? When are we going to follow up to make sure that we're actually doing what we said we would? Who are the accountability champions over each initiative? Who is going to be on their task force or committee to help make it happen? Etc., etc. What training is required? Lots of those sort of accountability oriented questions. But at its very basic level, you must leave with a clear follow-up. When are we going to get back together or have a call or whatever and talk about it, see where we're at, and who is going to be responsible for what by when. You must have this. So to review, 5 things to focus on in order to develop a killer strategy: having a clear goal, having the appropriate timeline, having the right number of key priorities, having the right people engaged in the right capacities, and number 5, don't forget this one, having clear accountability and follow through established before you leave the room. If you do those 5 things, then like our client who spent 7 years trying to get this right with very little traction and then completely changed the face of their team and their business after applying these, you're likely to have a pretty killer strategy.